To find the distance, we're going to use the distance formula. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label my points. X, Y, X, Y. This is 1, this is 2. So inside my square root, I'm going to take the x's, so I'm going to underline the x's and put -7 and -2. Plus, I like to put my negative in already, and then I'm going to take my y's, -5 and -8, and put them in that order. So, this becomes an addition, and I have -5 squared plus, this becomes addition, 3 squared. So I have 25 plus 9, which equals the square root of 36. Excuse me, that is the square root of 34. So then I'm going to go into my calculator, second square root of that answer, and my distance is going to be 5.83. You try this one. Find the x and the y intercepts. So we'll start with the x-intercept. To find the x-intercept, I'm going to figure out a number for x and plug in a 0 for y. So I have 0 equals -1/2 x plus 18. So you're going to have to be careful. Some of these problems, the x's and the y's are on the same side, and that's okay. All right, to solve this, I'm going to go ahead and subtract 18 to the other side. So I have -18 equals -1/2 x. Divide both sides by -1/2. And 18 divided by -1/2 is 36. So there's my x-intercept written as a coordinate point. My y-intercept means I need a number for y when I put in a 0 for x. So y equals -1/2 times 0 plus 18. That cancels because anything times 0 is 0, and y equals 18. So my y-intercept is 0, 18. You try. Please notice that your x's and your y's are on the same side, but you're still going to do the same thing. Plug in a 0 for x, solve for y. Plug in a 0 for y and solve for x. The coordinates on a map for Phoenix are 17, 11, and Tucson are 79, 123. This should say, note the coordinates represent miles. Find the distance between the two cities. So I'm finding the distance, so I need the distance formula. x1 minus x2 plus y1 minus y2. So what I need to look at is I have 17, 11 and 79, 123. So let's go ahead and label them. XY, XY. So make sure you go in the order. So let's do our x's first. 17 and 79. Oops, wrong side. Let's try that again. 17 and 79. My y's are 11 and 123. 17 minus 79 is -62 squared. 11 minus 123 is -112 squared. So I'm going to take 62 squared and add 112 squared. Now I'm going to use my calculator. So when I do that, I get the square root of 16,388. When I take the square root of that answer, it says round to the nearest mile, so I get 128 miles. You try this problem. Write an equation of a line. I like to use the point slope formula, x minus x1 plus y1. So here's what I know. The x-intercept is 2, so I'm going to write it as a point. And it goes through the point negative 4, 12. So we need two things to make an equation of a line. We need a slope and we need a point. We're going to find both. Slope starts with a change in y's over the change in x's. So I'm going to underline my y's because they go on the top, and I'm going to write them in order. 0, 12. Then the x's go on the bottom, 2, negative 4. So when I do that, I get negative 12 over 6, and I get a slope of negative 2. So I'm going to use this equation. Y equals, m stands for slope, negative 2. X, and I need to use a point. So let's use the one with a 0. It's usually easier. Here's x and y, x1 and y1. So x minus x1, which is 2, plus 0. Now I just have to distribute and solve. So I'm going to distribute this negative 2. So I have y equals negative 2x plus 4 plus 0. So my final answer is y equals negative 2x plus 4. You try. Y-intercept is 8, so let me help you there. 0, 8, and goes through the point 4, negative 8. So find the slope, then write the equation of a line. Write an equation of a line that passes through and is perpendicular to this. So the first thing I have to do is take this and solve for y. Negative 5y, I'm going to move x to the other side by subtracting it, which is the opposite. Divide by negative 5, divide by negative 5, divide by negative 5. So I have y equals positive 1/5 x plus 8/5. Now, to be perpendicular to something, my slope is the opposite reciprocal. So the opposite of 1/5 is 5 over 1, which is 5. If this is a positive, that means this needs to be a negative. So perpendicular has opposite reciprocal slopes, and parallel has the exact same slope. So I also have this point 2, negative 7, so now I'm just using my point slope form. Y equals negative 5, x minus, here's x1, y1, x1, which is 2, y1 at the end. So I have y equals negative 5x plus 10 minus 7. Therefore, my final answer is y equals negative 5x plus 3. You try a problem like this, but note that this time I'm asking you for parallel, which is going to be the same slope once you find the slope here. Simplify. I'm going to distribute, so I have negative 8 plus 5i. I don't have anything on the outside, so I'm just going to bring it down. So like terms, I have 5 and negative 8, so I have negative 3. Then I have negative 8 and a positive 5, so I have negative 3i. And there's my final answer. You try one. This time the parentheses are touching. That means time. So I'm going to do boxes. I have 4 and a positive I. I have 2 and a negative 3i. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times I is positive 2i. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12i. minus 3i squared. So what I currently have is, let's take a look at this. I have negative 3 and I squared equals negative 1, which is positive 3. So this right here is positive 3. So 3 plus 8 is 11. Negative 12i and 2i is negative 10i. You try a problem similar to this. All right, simplify when I have division. Our goal is to get rid of this down here. So I'm going to multiply what's called by the conjugate. The conjugate is exactly the same numbers, but I change the sign from a minus to a plus. So I have the opposite. And what I do to the bottom, I do to the top. Okay, so now I'm going to take the top and multiply them here. So 6 minus 2i, 1 plus 2i. That gives me 6 minus 2i plus 12i minus 4i squared, which this becomes the opposite, which is 4, because negative 4 times negative 1. So on the top, I have 10 plus 10i. The bottom, I have 1 minus 2i, 1 plus 2i. So 1 minus 2i plus 2i minus 4i squared. This right here becomes a positive 4. So 1 plus 4 is 5. Next, I'm going to check all 3 pieces. And since all 3 pieces are divisible by 5, that goes in 1 time, that goes in 2 times, that goes in 2 times. My final answer is 2 plus 2i. You try. Simplify. The first thing I have to do is I have to take the i's out. So I have I rad 36 minus 3i rad 16. Next, the square root of 36 is 6 times that I. Minus 3i square root of 16 is 4. So I have 6i minus 12i, which equals negative 6i. You try one. Last problem. We're going to set up, because we're going to solve this, we're going to set up a compound inequality. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take x minus 5 greater than 12 greater than the opposite of 12. Then whatever I do to the middle, I do to both outsides. So I have negative 7 greater than x greater than 17. Let's do a simple sketch of this. Here's 0. Here's 17, here's negative 7. I'm going to have open circles at both. And I like to look at this. X is greater than 17. So my answer goes in that direction, which means this one goes in the opposite. And the reason why, if I take this and I flip the order, which means I need to flip the sign. So now I think the answers were in interval notation. So from negative infinity to 7. Or from 17 to infinity. Last problem I want you to try.